I am one of the original members, one of the founding members of the Orion Quartet. Danny and Todd are brothers, and we're playing quartets together for years, and quartets were such an important part of their experience of growing up as musicians and as people.
Our father, Eugene Phillips, who was a violinist in the Pittsburgh Symphony, had a string quartet always, and mostly made up of members of the Pittsburgh Symphony. But they were very tolerant and good sports in letting each of us play in second violin in his quartet when we were teenagers.
We were taught that playing in a string quartet was the highest goal we could achieve as string players. Sándor Vég, the great violinist, became a very important mentor for me and my brother. In fact, that's where my brother and I got to play first and second violin with each other. We had an ongoing group with Stephen Isserlis and Susie Mazzaros, who's the violist of the Schoenbergian Quartet now.
This is my 15th year. I replaced the violist who retired after 5 years. Although many of us have played together for a lot longer than that. I've actually been playing with Tim Eddy for 23 years. We were in a quartet 8 years before I joined this Orion Quartet.
Of course, every member of this quartet, I assure you, is very individual. Playing together is always a very lively experience because it's such an adventure to see where are things going to go this time.
Our aim as a quartet is to never give up the sense of playing from our own gut, from our own feeling. It's a little bit dangerous to make sure that we are always listening to one another rather than just rehearsing so it's very fixed. That's something I think we learned from Vég, who encouraged us to have the music first and the technique, the polishing as a kind of an end result finally, so things don't become too stiff or planned sounding. So we have the license to be spontaneous as we go.
We're a very democratic organization. Anybody can and does stop the rehearsal and take charge of the rehearsal, run the rehearsal. There's only one rule about that. You've got to have something clear to try out. And vague criticism or musings are not efficient use of our time and productive use of our time. So if we've got something to propose and to try out, then we give each other the lead. You pick up so much from each other with playing. Things that don't need to be discussed, don't need to be described. We're just compatible. We're on the same wavelength, have the same kind of musical values. The same things are important. We get ourselves out into our sounds in similar ways.
Being good at second violin is almost a greater skill than first violin, the way that one has to be a soloist and then be an inner part back and forth all the time. But we're both very comfortable being the leader as well. We found that we were good at both things, and it kind of works out well for us, and the other guys don't even remember who's playing first on which piece, so I guess it doesn't matter to them.
The Beethoven quartets are, I think, a central part of any serious string quartet's repertoire. And in particular, if one spends a lot of time exploring these works, it has profound influence on the way you play just about everything else. It's the deepest, sometimes complicated, most demanding music that we encounter. And this has had such an effect on our playing. This is the cycle that we prefer to play as many times as possible, because not only do we keep developing and our relationship with Mr. Beethoven keeps developing. But there's something so at once satisfying and yet unreachable at the same time, where you never feel that you're there. You always think, well, we need to explore more.
And in playing the Beethoven string quartets, I think what Vague told us is very true, that playing Beethoven strengthens you, because we all have like a comfortable limit, let's say, of emotions and states of being that we experience. And Beethoven seems to constantly expand them and make one do uncomfortable things. So for instance, in the slow movement of Opus 132, he makes us play these incredibly long, sustained lines and go to a kind of transcendent height that we wouldn't normally feel like doing. But there it is, we turn the page and Beethoven says, do this. I mean, and part of us says is, well, it's a great thing to try to aspire to these heights, and the other part says, oh, do we have to? Oh my God, how are we ever going to achieve this? The allure of Beethoven's music is, as Arthur Schnabel said, the great pianist, Beethoven's music is greater than is possible to realize. So in fact, there isn't an ideal performance possible of all the aspects of Beethoven's music. You can only just try to get as many as you can.
Beethoven was so extraordinarily perceptive about emotional and spiritual aspects of human life, and he can go in any direction, from tenderness to banality to a kind of comfortable joyfulness to threatening, frightening music that makes you tremble to experience it, that literally makes you fearful, and to the most mystical and spiritual kinds of experiences.
The beauty of playing this for the rest of your life is that you will discover new things every time you play them, and get a little closer to achieving the artistic vision that Beethoven has set out.
Technically and of course musically. One of the challenges in a string quartet is that, yes, we all feel very strongly all these emotions or the virtuosity of the music, but then we have to do it together. And that's not always so easy to do with 4 different people with strong personalities. And we don't like to give up too much of our own personalities when we play together. So it's often, it can be a struggle, but ultimately it's more satisfying to do it that way than to just feel like, well, let's round off all the edges and try to play as homogeneous as possible and give up your ideals.
Well, Beethoven played the viola and he played the violin, and I think he was incredibly equal in how he treated the instruments. The viola has great parts in these quartets, and like every other part in it, the counterpoint is so perfectly done that every note we play is as if we were playing our own melodic part. And when I play the music, that's how I see my role.
we're so excited to be going to King's Place. And the whole adventure of being part of the breaking in of this wonderful new venue. We've played concerts before in Wigmore Hall and Queen Elizabeth Hall. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be coming back to London, and then to come back for this festive event and adventure is a particular pleasure.
We're visiting on two separate occasions. On our first set of concerts, we will be doing Opus 130 in its published version, which has a rondo as the last movement. And at the end of the cycle, we're going to finish with Opus 130 with the Grosse Fuge, which is Opus 133, which is how we originally composed it. We didn't like the idea of doing them in order, because if one did, then the first two concerts would only be the early quartets. So each concert will have a mix of things. Each concert will have an Opus 18 on it. There's 6 concerts, so that kind of works out conveniently.